Welcome to an overview of the new release of the TIPS well log modeler. We're currently going to be showing version 3.505. The newest release is based on 3.5. So let's go through some of the basics of this new application. A lot of things are very similar. I'm going to pull up a well log. Everything should migrate quite nicely from before. Um, but as we go across the top, the big thing that we're going to notice the change on is the seismic data. So we still have a button across the top that says seismic. In the past, we would click that and you would pick a single seismic line that was associated with this well. Now we actually have the ability to put in multiple seismic lines to do our well ties. And so we can go click the button at the top and we hit seismic, add seismic line, and that would show it down here under this node in the tree. A couple of the other things that we've done that are kind of interesting when we've updated the depth time controls. So now when you click it, you specify your start time. If you have check shot data, it would use that start time, or you have the option to use that. You can shift the entire well up and down, which again, when we get into the seismic well tie, that'll come in. And if we've applied the check shot correction, we can do that. And if we've come up with any stretch and squeeze while doing the well tie, we can make sure that that is applied so that our depth time relationship for all of our other synthetics will show up at the same time. One of the things that folks have asked for quite a bit is when we get into these AVO models that whereas in the past we could fill in the peaks and we could fill in the troughs, which we still can, but also get into a little bit more of a traditional seismic style of coloring. Um, we've redone the toolbar across the top. We'll get into these in later videos. One of the things I like is the little highlight button, so that you click on it and move, it shows you exactly where you are on all the charts. And when you get tired of seeing that, you turn that off. But to get the background color over here, I'm going to turn we have AVO display controls. We have our wiggle controls, and we can show them. We can fill the peaks or not fill the peaks. Same with the troughs. And the wiggle has a trace gain, just like before. We can move it up and down. I'm going to turn the peak fill off, and then I'm going to do a background color. And again, before we had a color spectrum, a single gradient, double gradient, which really wasn't typical for what you would expect to see in a synthetic seismogram. So now we can come over here and we can pick, do we want grayscale or color, and then we'll also be able to change the palettes. And I'll pick grayscale for now. And just for the sake of, I'll turn the wiggles off. And the background has its own trace gain. And you can see as I change that up, I could put the wiggles back on so you can sew and see that when I change my wiggle trace gain, I'm not impacting the color intensity. If I want to go to a color, I click the color button, and now it's going to replace it with a color. You might say, well, what's the spectrum that we have? There's a little button right here to set that palette, and this is a whole set of tools where you can pick from predefined ones or create your own palette, and you can move these values around. It's very simple, very easy to do. But once you've done that, you hit accept, and now I'm using that color spectrum on here. So it's a really nice little tool. We'll get into more on how we control that. One of the things we've also done is, let's go back to just looking at this so it'll show up nicely. We put some of the more common AVO settings in this toolbar here. For instance, I've got the move out method, and we're using a ray trace approach right now. I can look at a VRMS, and I click on that, and it changes, or I can look at no stretch and see that impact, or I could just say just no move out at all whatsoever, and you get that crazy view. I can also look at the primary reflections or the shear reflections, PP or PS. If I look at it, that's the shear, and you'll notice it tells you at the top as well. And when I do that, I can look at what portion of that I want to look at. So let's go back to PP. Now this is the total contribution, and I can look at the Shui AI PR delta V over V. So this is the Poisson's reflectivity contribution to our AVO model. The other thing that we've done is all the depth time settings that you have are always shown in this bar at the bottom. So you always know what you're looking at. Um, One last thing, I'm going to reserve the seismic data analysis for its own video next because that's a quite extensive one. But another tool that I like is we can um, merge LAS files. Now you kind of do this outside of a project. You can do it while project's running, but it's safer so that you're not trying to use the actual LAS file in that project to do it. But let's say you've got 5 LAS files that you need to put in here. Now, as you know, tips, when we read it and load it, we only do one LAS file at a time because there are too many variabilities. But you can hit the merge LAS files and then pick the files that you would have, and then you would pick whatever mnemonics that you want to put over, and that would output the a merged LAS file at the depth step that you specify, and then you can pull that in and run your model off of there. So again, there are quite a few other changes here. The big change is going to be when we look at the seismic data and well tie. We'll address that in the next video.